Right, I think we are going to get started with this week's Student Bites. So, good afternoon, hello, welcome to Student Bites. My name is George Wright, and I'm the Student Engagement Lead here at My G-Work, and I'm responsible for helping our graduates and helping to connect them to inclusive employers. Our inclusive employer this week, AB InBev, is a partner inclusive employer over on My G-Work, and all of their job postings, events, employees, etc. can be found over on their organization page on our website. If you'd like to get in touch at any point for questions, connections, or just to have a chat, please feel free to contact me on the details there. Connect with me on My G-Work, find me on LinkedIn, etc. But before we get into this week's discussion and meet our panel, let's revisit some of the top stories of the week. Fortnite streamer Ewok Wheeler came out as trans and bisexual this week. Ewok shared everything about him coming out as transgender and bisexual in a Twitter post. "This is my coming out post," he wrote. "I am transgender, female to male. I go by he and him now. There's a difference between gender and sexual orientation. I'm bisexual as well." Alongside his coming out, Ewok also supported anyone in the same situation who might not be ready to come out. "Not everyone is ready to come out, and it is not all about coming out," he wrote. "It's about celebrating others and being finally free to walk in a beautiful paradise with them. To many, you were worthy and loved. Take your time, you are still valid." According to esports, Ewok currently streams for and is part of the FaZe clan, who have been supportive of his decision and situation. He has been part of the organization since 2019 and is deaf, but has been able to play Fortnite thanks to them implementing a sound visualizer. Throughout his career, Ewok has played with a lot of notable figures in the Fortnite and Twitch community, including Tyler Ninja Blevins and Tim the Tapman Beta. Ewok concluded his statement by talking about being the first trans man in a Tier 1 esports organization. "This is huge, especially because I am in FaZe and the first transgender guy in Tier 1 esports organization. There are not many trans people in organizations or stuff like that. I want to be as honest and as possible with you guys." In Algeria, an Algerian court has sentenced 2 men to jail and gave 42 others suspended sentences after mass arrests at what authorities called a gay wedding. Last July, police in Algeria raided a private residence and made mass arrests following complaints by a neighbor. Authorities claimed in court that the decorations, flowers, food, and the men's gay appearance were evidence of a gay wedding celebration. Algerian authorities' attack on personal freedoms is nothing new, but arresting dozens of students based on their perceived sexual orientation is a flagrant infringement on their basic rights, said Rasha Yunus, the LGBT rights researcher for the Human Rights Watch. Pardon me. They should immediately be released from prison. The 2 men who would be free today were it not for Algeria's regressive anti-homosexuality laws. According to OUT, most of the 35 men and 9 women arrested were university students. They were convicted on charges of same-sex relations, public indecency, and subjecting others to harm by breaking quarantine restrictions. The 2 men sent to jail received 3 years sentences and a fine, while the others received suspended sentences of 1 year. Same-sex relations are forbidden in Algeria, a deeply religious and conservative state. Penalties for some of the acts of public indecency are increased by up to 3 years if the alleged acts against nature involving members of the same sex. Algeria is a state party to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, as well as the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, and the arrests and convictions violate protections for consensual adult activities enshrined in those agreements. Yunus said Algerian authorities should stop using the global pandemic as a cover for continued acts of oppression against the LGBT+ community in Algeria. While people in Algeria continue to demand their basic rights to progress, the statement said, the authorities are dedicating their time and resources to crack down on students and stockpile discriminatory charges against them. Instead of policing its citizens' private lives, the Algerian government should carry out reforms, including decriminalizing same-sex conduct. In other court news, the European Court of Human Rights has ruled this week that Russia has infringed on the freedom of activists protesting their gay propaganda bill. In 2013, Russia's lower house of parliament, the State Duma, passed a law imposing heavy fines on individuals that shared information on homosexuality with people under the age of 18. Then it was announced that the additional readings of the bill banning the promotion of non-traditional sexual relations among minors would take place a few days later. On the 11th of June, media and gay rights protesters challenged the legislative ban, and a group of conservative Orthodox Christian activists who were supporting the bill were present outside the Duma building. The Christian activists chanted, "Moscow is not Sodom," as the LGBT activists replied, "Moscow is not Iran," and "Fascism shall not pass." The LGBT protesters were surrounded by riot police officers and pushed into buses. Meanwhile, those congregating and acting in favour of the bill were not treated roughly or fined at all, although later the Russian government argued that the police also apprehended supporters of the bill. Russian domestic courts state they found the applicants liable for violating procedures by taking part in an unauthorised gathering. In particular, the courts considered it unlawful that some protesters shouted slogans and failed to verify whether the gathering was legitimate. The protesters in question challenged Russian courts' belief and complained they were subjected to disproportionate measures as participants of a peaceful public assembly. Additionally, the applicants insisted that those who came in support of the bill were not subjected to arrests or fines or sanctions, contrary to the treatment of the LGBT activists. On October 13th, the European Court of Human Rights Committee rejected the Russian government's claims and have ordered the country to award applicants €5,000 in damages each. Russia has upheld a track record of curbing LGBT progression and has faced several interventions from the European Court, with the country trying to ban pride events in 2018 and attempting to action a gay propaganda law in 2017. With that out of the way, let's turn our attention to the main focus of today's webinar. Today we're talking to AB InBev, the company behind some of the most instantly recognizable brands such as Budweiser, Corona, and Stella Artois. AB InBev's profile and events can be found on MyGWork, and we're joined today by Florestan, Head of HR and for Zone and Global Functions. Florestan graduated with a business engineering bachelor's degree from the UCL Leuven in Belgium in 2014, and then joined the Global Alliance in Management Education, the CEMS program, a master's degree designed to develop an international network of young talent coached by high-quality professors. In 2016, he started his career with AB InBev as a global management trainee in France. After 10 months of the graduate program, he took different positions, trade marketing, HR project manager, etc., covering France, Spain, Italy, the Netherlands, and some of the Nordic countries. He is now back in Belgium to work as the head of HR for Zone and Global Functions in Leuven. So hello, Florestan. If I just start the video. Thank you for joining us this week. It's lovely to see you.
Hello, thank you very much for welcoming me.
I suppose I'll start by asking, so could you just tell us a little bit more about who AB InBev are and what sort of work they do?
Sure. So as you said, I think most of you must know the company. And if you don't know the company, I think I didn't know the company even before applying. You at least know the brands. You have some brands hidden behind me. I'm at home in Belgium. We are back in a kind of a lockdown, so we need to work from home. But I used to drink and enjoy the beers that we were selling at home. So that's why I still had some in the fridges. So I hope that you can recognize some of the beer brands that you can be fond of at home. As George, you said, we are kind of known for three main brands that we are selling all over the world, which are Stella, Corona, and Budweiser. In some countries, the last one can be called Bud, but we have more than 300 beer brands across the world. So no matter which country you're in, I'm sure that you can enjoy some of our freshest beer and the most local ones. So yeah, our main core business, I would say, is to brew beer, sell beer, and distribute beer all over the world. We are also kind of diversifying ourselves into some other products, such as more hard liquor. We're also trying to reuse all the products that are in the supply chain. So, for example, we're using a lot of cereals because the beer is coming from cereals, right? And we are reusing a lot of these cereals to also create some energy bars, some other energy drinks. So we are kind of diversifying, but of course, if you know us, it's because of our beers. And I hope that you have all at least tried once one of our beers, which are both with alcohol, but we also have a lot of beers without alcohol. So everybody can enjoy our products anywhere normally.
Fantastic. And I mean, we've touched a little bit upon your progression through AB InBev, but just out of curiosity, you know, what kind of what kind of encouraged you to apply? What really was the catalyst moment for you in wanting to join AB InBev?
So as you said, I directly joined after my studies. I think I did international management studies, and usually in Belgium, these are the kind of, I guess in the other countries it's quite similar, but a lot of students doing that, it's because they are quite of generalist profiles. They like to do a lot of things. They're also quite good in various skills, but you never really know what you want to do, right? So as a last year student, I had the chance in my university to have a lot of events with companies passing by and presenting themselves. And I was really struck by ABI because they came several times in my university. Each time they came with some of their employees at the time. And I really recognized myself in all the people I met there. And I still remember one of the events that they organized was at one of a local restaurant place, so that we could network a bit with the leaders of the organization and the managers. It was still in a world where we could do some social gatherings, which is not possible right now in Belgium, but at that time it was possible. And what I really enjoyed was that I could feel very similar to these people. I didn't feel like different, even though I was much younger. I was maybe Belgian and they were from all the other countries, all the other backgrounds. But I really enjoyed the way of discussing the opening, how open the culture was also. And I remember one anecdote is that during that particular event that I mentioned on in this local restaurant, one of the activity was to kind of cook together with some of the ABI employees so that you could network in a more informal way. And I was standing next to somebody. Of course, in these kind of recruitment events, you're a little bit stressed. So to be honest, I didn't recognize the name, and I didn't understand the name of that person standing next to me, like cutting some onions and scampis next to me. And actually, I realized at the end of the evening that the guys who was cooking with me and with whom I had a very informal and very nice chat was the vice president HR of ABI Zone Europe. And as I'm saying, like, I never felt any barrier between himself and myself. I directly felt part of the team, part of the group. He was very interested into my experiences, even though I didn't have any like major professional experience until then, but at least my journey until that event, and it was very genuinely interested, and that's what I could definitely grasp, and that's what I really enjoyed. So apart from that anecdote, I think that was one of the main thing that I will remember, I think, all my life, because I was very ashamed afterwards. In the end, you can see that it didn't pay, at least I didn't pay it out during the selection process. But I think that's something that really represents very well all the other people that I could meet during these events. And I'm directly, so after this event, I actually only applied to ABI because this was really the type of company I wanted to join. And on top of that, they had some great programs that they could offer. As you also said during the introduction, I started with one of the graduate programs that AB InBev is offering. And the other opportunity there, and why I really enjoy that opportunity, is that it gave us, during quite a short amount of time, it was just 10 months, but it gave me a full visibility and a full vision of the company, right? So I have been working during these 10 months in a brewery. I've been working in sales in the field with my car, trying to sell the beer. So really from the production until really selling beer to bar owners, to consumers, to try to sell the products that we produce, of course. But it really gave me a full understanding of on not only the supply chain, but really how the company was working, how we were behaving between ourselves, but also with external stakeholders. And I think that was one of the best experience I could have to start a career. And after that graduate program, what I also like is that at the end of these opportunities, you can do whatever you want. And I think you can also see it in my background, because I started first in marketing. I was doing trade marketing in France. Now I'm in HR, and who knows in which function I'm going to be for my next move. Can still be in HR, can be in logistics, can be in finance. We're very open in terms of career development, and that's also what interested me a lot. So if I summarize, I would say, first of all, the people, second of all, the graded program offering, and third of all, also the type of career development opportunities that the company offers.
Fantastic. And I can imagine that must give you some sort of insight then. I imagine when you're able to go out to bars, to be able to sit there and actually, you know, fully understand the whole process of how it gets from, as you say, production all the way through to, you know, being poured out of a tap or opened, you know, from a fridge or something. That must be such a weird sort of insight, I suppose, on sort of that stage.
No, definitely. I think what we tend to do, when I say we, I'm more talking about humans, right? Not only ABI. But of course, if you're creating yourself a great innovation or a brand new product, you're super excited about it. And you're sure that everybody will be so excited about it too. And actually, when you are in the field, so I spent, I think it was 3 months that I spent across France in different cities and regions. First of all, you see that even though you might be as convinced as you can be about your product and your innovation, you will have a lot of doors closing up on you because bar owners are not interested by your product, or maybe you don't have the best selling story. So you will see that that's the first of kind of disappointment or frustration that you can experience being in the field. And the second thing that you will also see is that the world, and even one country, so I was mainly in France, but it would be the same in all the other countries. Even within the countries, there are so different, and regions are so different from one another. And I could definitely see in some part of the countries a bigger attraction to certain flavors, to certain beers. Some innovations were working much better than in other regions. And I think these are kind of learnings that, of course, you can guess. But as I told you, when you start a new product, when you launch something quite innovative, you will think that it's going to work. And sometimes you understand, thanks to the consumers, some things that maybe you didn't pay attention, some things that maybe your product has as a key selling product, a key selling unit too. But I think it's really that connection with the field, key connection with the consumers, that will also help you deliver the best products, help you deliver the best stories to the retailers, to the bars. And I think what I definitely learned is that we need to keep on opening our eyes, and we need to keep on listening to our consumers. And that's why since then, when I, even as an HR, I stayed connected also to all the people in the field, because they have so much more insights that we can have in an office, I would say. So yeah, very insightful experience, and very surprising too, as I said, because sometimes you might be driving an hour to a certain location, and then that location maybe is closed. So you just drove for nothing, or maybe the pub owner or the bar owner doesn't want to hear from you. And at the same time, you can also open some doors which are super welcoming, with people super eager to try your products. And after 1 week, they call you back to say, wow, the product works so much, I'm already sold out. So I need to find some ways to satisfy my consumers with other of your products. So you always have both, right? It's the right balance to find, but it was very, very interesting.
Fantastic. You've touched on it a little bit, but I just wondered, out of curiosity, I mean, you know, as we all appreciate, the pandemic has kind of changed how we work. As I said, the joys of working from home. I'm fortunate, I'm back in the office today, but I know the fun joys of working from home. Out of curiosity, what kind of was your office life like sort of before the pandemic, and how has that kind of changed going into lockdown?
Well, it changed a lot. I have to say it changed a lot, but we have offices almost all over the world. I think in more than 50 countries over the world, we have big offices with a lot of employees. There, overall, our offices are quite similar across the world, right? We do have big spaces to work. We also have big spaces to co-work, I would say. So we have a lot of meeting rooms, a lot of like locations where we can gather to network, also some coffee parts, also coffee because we don't drink alcohol, of course, during work hours. But we have non-alcoholic beers also in our fridges. And I think we are also having some very, particularly in the UK, for example, if you want to pass by in our offices when we will be open again, we have a very nice rooftop terrace with a bar over there. So I think in all the countries the offices are quite different, but you always have, of course, in the middle of it or at the top of it an open bar, and usually every Thursday afternoon we do have an open bar. Where we, of course, drink responsibly. That's not the purpose, but really just to network a bit and gather around with your colleagues, because that's also during this period of your day, even though you might be very busy, that you might exchange some very interesting insights, and it might also be feeding back into your work. So usually on Thursdays we had the open bar with my team. On Fridays we had the Falafel Fridays, where we used to go to some restaurants in the neighborhood of our offices. So that was very nice atmosphere, I think. And also, no matter the country you are, I think when you get, and I think that's also the topic that we can cover later on, but it's more in terms of inclusion and inclusiveness. I've always felt very welcome in the office. I've always felt very at my place, if I can say it like this, with all my colleagues. So we've had a lot of nice experiences both in the office but also after working hours, during some nice parties, evenings. Also, especially when you started as a graduate program, you start with a lot of other graduate programs at the same time. Of course, these people have tend to have the same age, are interested also by the same ambition in life, the same career. So of course you mingle and you connect with them very easily. I did, at least. I still have a lot of them that I consider really as friends and not as colleagues first. And of course there are still colleagues, but I think that's also part of the life at ABI. Now, of course, we're working from home, but yeah, we still have a lot of tools and resources to be able to connect. And I actually never felt more in touch with all the teams across the Zone Europe, because my scope is mainly in Zone Europe, than before, because now with you have Zoom, as we're using today, but we have a lot of other tools, resources, a lot of activities which are also happening in during the week, with some calls, some networking opportunities, some events organized by our internal communication team. So we always have an opportunity to connect once again, even though we might miss just cheering up with a beer in our hands on Thursday evenings. But we can do it virtually too, which we have done also.
Glad to see something's managed to continue during the pandemic. And I just thought I just touch it. So it said, you mentioned, the Thursday, the open bar, and that nice kind of social space. Do you find it's quite similar to that first kind of like networking event you had, where you're able to just talk to anyone regardless of what position they're in the company? Is that still that same open sort of atmosphere?
Yeah, definitely. I think also as a company, we're quite flat. So of course, there's always managers and there's always a hierarchy. But I'm sitting at the same level as our CEO for Zone Europe, as our VPs, and at the same time we have people from all the functions, and we're all sitting in the same floor, right? So if I have a question, and all our leaders have been very open to that, no matter the question, if you want to ask the question, you stand up, you pass by their desk, and you say, "And by the way, I was just wondering, how does that work, or did we ever think about that?" So that's the usual way of working, I would say, at ABI, in our offices. But of course, during the open offices, open bar, on Thursday, that kind of culture is definitely the same. So yeah, there is no barrier, and you will never feel somebody looking at you from the top to the bottom to ask, what the hell is that guy asking me, or that girl asking me? Definitely not. And you can definitely exchange and discuss your career. You can ask also for advices, for kind of mentoring advices, but you can also just talk random topics. You don't need to talk absolutely only about work during these open bar, which is also sometimes very, very good.
Yeah, that's sort of good de-stressing, definitely.
That's it.
I suppose my next kind of question kind of revolves around sort of your Pride network. I said, as we can see from sort of the panel picture, so about this sort of really like Pride focus. And I just wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the Pride network at AB InBev and sort of the work that they do.
Yeah, so the opportunity that we have at ABI is that AB InBev is that we are really a huge company, meaning that we are active in a lot of countries. So the first thing is that, of course, some countries are more advanced than others. And as a company, we still have a lot of things to do. Of course, I think I don't know any company which is really on the cutting edge of all the diversity and inclusion topics. So at ABI, we are really now fully embracing that question, if I can say it like this. In terms of diversity network and inclusion network that we have in the company, I think it's mainly organized around 3 pillars, right? First of all, inside the company, we have a lot of activities and activations that are available for employees. First of all, if I'm talking about Zone Europe, we're currently mainly focusing on Belgium and UK, which are more advanced in all these type of discussions. These are also the countries where we tend to have more employees. So luckily, we are touching the most of like a big part of the population there. But we organize a lot of things. We are, of course, organizing a lot of business resource groups, BRGs as we call them. And this has been built also thanks to some great best practices that we could copy paste from other countries. And I think, for example, in Brazil, we are super advanced on some discussions there. We have some BOC teams that we have there. So it's like teams which are called building opportunities for colleagues of all kinds. And we kind of copy pasted a bit this way of working to our countries. So we have business resource group for example, in Belgium and in UK, of course, but we have also in other countries where there we have some small task forces, I would say, which are based on a voluntary basis. So employees can join there and we can really implement different projects that are really important for the employees themselves to make sure that we answer the employees needs. But on top of that, of course, we are also tackling all kinds of diversity, right? So it's not only about LGBTQ plus population, but we are also tackling all the BAME population, so Black and minority ethnic population. We have some partnership also going there. We also have some diversity from a social and economic background. With some other partnerships that we are doing to try to connect with this population and try to also answer their needs and answer the questions and try to be as helpful as we can. And of course, we also have some. So I'm still in the first pillar, kind of internal company culture. We also have some. I don't know if it's rules or guidelines, but we want to be as gender neutral and gender diverse, I would say, in our workforce. And we have implemented recently also some policies, for example, regarding parental leaves that are now fully gender neutral. So we used to have, of course, the maternity leave with a lot of weeks and paternity leave, which were very short. Now it's really the employees and the couples that can decide, and no matter the gender, the parental leave for the first parent will be the same amount. And we are organizing a lot of Pride events also. So basically, of course, we are participating to some gay Pride in some countries. Recently, I participated, I think it was several weeks or months ago, I don't remember, we organized a short movie, Pride short movie night. And we also had Mary Mac, a drag queen, who joined us for a bingo session several months ago. So I think like we have plenty of different events and activities that are there, first of all, just to think about what are going to be the next activities, but also some other activities which are just there to enjoy the moment, spend some time together, even though now mostly virtually. This is the first part, I would say, in terms of the company culture. I think the second part, which is linked to the third pillar, is also all the work that we do together with our brands. And it's not only using brands as a marketing product, and that's where I want to go with my third pillar, is also using brands to influence the society we are active in. We have very strong brands if we talk about Corona, Stella Artois, Budweiser, but not only these ones, but of course these ones are known everywhere across the world. So every action that we can take with these brands will have a huge impact on the society all over the world. And we are also using these brands in local activations. And for example, Budweiser recently has been also, the packaging has been reviewed during the Pride Month with the Pride flag. And it's not only commercially thought or commercially led or marketing led. I think it's also definitely to also try to influence the societies. Another brand which is a bit less known in our countries, but very much known in Brazil, Brahma, was one of the first brand also in Brazil to be like with an ABI, lapsus, with a diversity flag and an LGBTQ plus flag on their bottles since 2012, I think. So it's been 8 years already. Yeah, and we know also the environment in Brazil. So that's also how we are using our brands to kind of play a role in the society there. So both internally but also externally, I would say that's how we can summarize it.
Excellent. And so really interesting that you touched on that, actually. So, you know, particularly perhaps being like the first brand in Brazil, for example. And so would you say then that the company is kind of one that isn't necessarily afraid to stand up for what it believes in things like LGBT rights, even when it, you know, even if it does mean being the first company, say, in an environment to do that then?
I'm not sure I understood the question. So you're asking if we're not afraid to use the brands, or?
So yeah, so I suppose it's just, you know, whether or not you feel then that said, yeah, that AB InBev is just sort of, it's not afraid to stand up and say, these are our brands and this is what we believe in, even if it means sometimes being the first to say, like, for example, in Brazil.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's something that we even want to strengthen now, because I mentioned that anecdote. I mean, it's not an anecdote, but that's that campaign that we launched in 2012. But it's not the only one that we launched, and we are even going further now. I think it was a year ago or maybe 2 years ago. We also now implemented from the global marketing point of view a chart, like a policy on all our brands. And all our brands need now to really have a diverse perspective in all our campaigns. So it's touching not only the diversity and inclusion topics, but it's touching a lot of topics. And also our responsibility as a global brewer, as the biggest brewer in the world, that we have, first of all, towards societies in terms of diversity and inclusion, but also towards responsible drinking, for example, but also towards like the legal age of drinking. So now I think it's been, as I said, 1 year that it's been made very, very clear what we can do with our brands and what we cannot do with our brands. Because as I said, we have more than 300 brands in the world. So sometimes we have very small brands with very small teams, and I might not know all of them, of course, and I certainly not know all the campaigns that have been launched on these brands. But now, thanks to this policy, we really make sure that we can all be proud of all the brands that we have all around the world. And I think that there's also a very strong brand in Belgium, a huge brand in Europe, which is Jupiler, which was also in the past very manly. Like it was a very man brand, I would say. All the campaigns were also very much oriented towards that. And now we also definitely implemented that policy to make sure that the brand is definitely much more a reflect and a mirror of the society that the brand is sold in. So definitely we're using that. And maybe one last example also on how we're using our brands. We recently, several years ago, we bought SAB Miller. So that's one of one of these brands, and this company was very active in Africa, especially in South Africa, in that country. And in 2018, there has been a lot of noise made about domestic violence, and we also once again used our brands there with all our labels as No Excuse, and that was the No Excuse campaign that was launched in South Africa, just to make sure that everybody who could see our brands, no matter in an advert on TV, in the radio, in the shops, could see that No Excuse label. And I think wherever we can, we will always try to use also the power of our brands to try to shift a bit the mindsets of our societies. To the extent that we can, of course, but that's I'm sure that all my marketing colleagues are totally aligned with that.
Fantastic, thank you. Out of curiosity, I mean, in the past we've spoken to other companies like AB InBev that manage a wide number of brands. Just from a company structure perspective, how does working with these sort of brands work? Is it that you're assigned to a team that works in a brand, or you oversee a number of brands? What's the kind of, because I said, as you mentioned, you've got about 300 brands. What is that kind of division in your ability to, say, for example, work with Bud, and then maybe a couple of months actually, no, I'm actually going to be working with Stella Artois or something. What's the scope for that?
Yeah, it depends a bit on the size of the brands. Of course, if you mention Bud, Stella, Corona, I think these are huge brands, and there is plenty of work to do on these brands. So usually when you work on these type of brands, you usually work on one of them. But of course, with career developments, career moves, I can always go to another after some years. But how we are structured in Zone Europe, once again, different zones across the world might have different type of structures. But I'm more experienced in Europe. So in Europe, basically, we do mainly work on some brands. So for example, with our global brands, Stella, Corona, Budweiser, there is a team dedicated to these brands. And within that team, usually people are working only on one brand. And they're working on the brand, but on a scope of various countries. So for example, you could be a marketing manager, Budweiser for France, Italy, Netherlands. So that would be the type of standard role that you could find for the global brands. Then we also have local jewels, as we call them. And the local jewels are brands which are very strong in some countries. Let's mention Jupiler, for example, in Belgium. We have Hertog Jan in the Netherlands. It's names that you might never have heard about if you were not really native from that countries. But in these countries, they really own the market, I would say. And on these brands, we also usually have a team really dedicated to one brand, because with all the campaigns and all the work that we have to do on these ones, it's better to be focused on that. And then we have a third type of brands, which are more the craft and specialty brands, which are also usually smaller brands that we are growing in different markets. And there we can mention, of course, Camden coming from the UK. We can mention Triple Carmelite. We can mention Ginette. So we have a big portfolio there too. But these brands are a little bit smaller, also with less campaigns. So sometimes when you're working in these teams, you kind of work on several brands. So you might be working together at the same time with a team, but at the same time on Triple Carmelite, on Quack, on Ginette, and depending on the activities needed, you might be working more on one brand and less on the other, and maybe 3 months later you switch a bit. But these are the three main type of brands and the three main type of structures, I would say.
Fantastic. And I suppose now my next kind of sort of frame of questioning is more kind of around the graduate opportunities. As you mentioned, you came into the company via a graduate scheme. How was that? What was the application process like for that graduate scheme?
Yeah, so we have 4 graduate programs in Zone Europe, one of which can be found all over the world. But in Zone Europe, we are quite diverse in terms of graduate programs that we offer. So I'm going to quickly go through these 4 graduate programs, and then I can describe how you can apply to them. First of all, we have the Global Management Traineeship. So that's the GMT, and that's the program I did. So it's kind of a short program. It's 10 months to 1 year. You're quite generalist because you go through different functions. We also try when we can travel to make you see different countries. So of course our zone HQs for Europe, it's in Leuven in Belgium, but also maybe a capability center. So we have one in Prague in Zone Europe also, and then of course the country where you're working in. So this is the Global Management Trainee. If you have any question, you can also ask further, and we can also connect later on. We have another program which can be found in a lot of European countries too, which is the MVP, which is the Market Visionaries program. That's a sales program. So during 18 to 24 months, you're really on the field, working as a sales rep basically. And on top of that role, you have a lot of trainings, networking opportunities, and development opportunities also as a next steps in your career. So these are the GMT you can find all over the world. MVP you can find in a lot of countries in Europe. Then the third program we have is the SMT, so supply management trainee, and that's for all the more supply-oriented, supply and logistics-oriented people. So that's a shorter program. It's 6 months, where you will work both in the logistics team, but also in the breweries to really understand the operations there. And after, you can take a managerial position in either logistics, supply chain, or any other position that you might think it's interesting for your development. And the last program, it's one program that we only have in Prague, in Czech Republic, is the Fast Track Leadership Program. It's a one-year program there, intended to really build the leaders of tomorrow. So in 1 year, you really know, you work in a team 6 months, then you work in another team 6 months to really know all the operations and the admin topics of that team. And after 1 year, you can take the leadership of that team. So after 1 year, you can take the management of a team of 6, 7 people. Of course, you have other paths also. So if you want to go to another position, you can also take other type of position, but this is kind of the standard career next step, I would say. So these are the 4 programs that we offer. And in terms of application process, it's quite simple. So everything starts from the Europe Careers website. So here, once again, I'm more talking about the European opportunities, but you can also just type on Google AB InBev Careers. You will directly go to our global website, and when selecting your zone, it will redirect you to the right page. But if you're talking about Europe, you can just type in europe.ab InBev Europe Careers, .ab InBev, and there you will find all the opportunities that you can start with at AB InBev. The process for all the graduate programs is quite similar, even though some steps might differ in terms of content, but at least the number of steps is the same. First of all, you need to apply as usual on the website to give some personal details. You can put a cover letter, but it's not really looked at because we really don't want to be biased by anything like this. So it's better to put your CV because we need to double check whether you might have the number of years of studies, because we expect a bachelor, so 3 years of studies for some of the graduate programs. But that's it. We will not be selecting you only based on your CV or cover letter. Answer some questions like, do you have your driving license or anything else? And that's gonna be it basically. So that's the first step. Second step, you will be invited to do some online tests. So we are partnering there with a partner which is called Cognisys. It's kind of online tests which are allowing us to assess a bit your cognitive and emotional skills. And it's also kind of gamified. So all the tests that you're going to do there are really type of online games. So sometimes you're just a driver, you're in a car, you need to avoid some stuff, and at the same time you need to react to some things popping up to the screen. So it's kind of it's still a fun experience. So we'll have that online test, and this allows us to, as I said, assess you on certain attributes, and we have clear attributes that we are looking for. And these attributes are different based on the graduate programs you're applying for. If you pass through that step, we will invite you to a video interview. So basically there, it's a new process that we're launching this year. So if anybody tried to apply last year, it's going to change a little bit. But you will be given kind of a scenario, a simulation of what could happen in your life at ABI. You will be given 1 hour to think about what would be your reaction, and then you need to pitch it in 3 minutes. Record yourself, and of course, our teams will be looking at the videos. Next step, if you get selected, you're invited to a virtual ABI day this year. We used to have to invite each time in our offices, but this time it's going to be virtual. A virtual ABI day, it's going to be a day full of different activities, fun activities, but also interviews to get to know you better, to see how you react under pressure, how you react in a team, with some also role game simulations, etc. So that's the ABI day. And if you made it to the last step, it's the final panel, which will also be organized virtually this year. And the final panel consists of a type of interview, but rather than being a one-on-one interview, it's going to be a panel of directors or VPs interviewing a panel of candidates. So you usually have 4 people from our directors team, and then you have 4 or 5 candidates, and they can all answer on the questions asked, but also react on the questions from the others. And it's really a discussion, I would say. So that would be the last step. And if you're selected, you will be called when one of these panelists to of course let you know about the good news. So this is how the process is made. And once again, also during that process, we make sure that we are giving all the chances to diverse backgrounds, right? So each step is evaluated by different people to make sure that there is no bias used in the process. And once again, as I said, we are not kind of selecting based on your CV or on your cover letter, because that's also a source of a lot of biases. So we try to do our best also only in the selection process, I would say.
Excellent. We've had a question in our chat asking, what is the Capability Center in Prague?
Good question. So basically, the Zone Europe, all the countries are organized in different business units. But when you're working with more than 8,000 employees, also working with a lot of systems, of course, you need a lot of teams supporting all these systems, teams supporting all the background job that needs to be done for these 8,000 employees. And basically, we have a big office in Prague, so in Czech Republic, where we have all type of jobs, from finance job to logistics job to IT jobs. And all these teams are also supporting us in our day-to-day life. As I said, supporting us on the different processes that are in place, trying to centralize them, standardize them, improve. So all the roles that we have there are also very interesting, because it's really about process optimization, but also how we as a company can work much leaner, much faster. Because it's still a supply chain job, right? So you need to produce, you need to deliver, and sometimes some steps might take a lot of time. We are not yet in industry 4.0. So I think this is definitely also one of the offices with a lot of future, because this is where we will implement all the new ways of working with the 5G, with all these kind of tools that will come to us very soon.
Excellent. And then I think we'll take our final question, Q&A, where someone's asked, thanks, this has been so useful. Any tips on standing out from the other candidates?
So tips and tricks, it's a good question. My main tips, at least the main tip that I received and also that I would give, is to be yourself. It's very difficult to prepare. Why? Because we made it on purpose, right? So I cannot really say that you need to prepare anything. The best thing that you can do is, of course, know the company, know our culture, know our values. You can find everything on the internet. I think it's pretty easy to find information on that. So if you have information about the company and our culture, if you have information about the beer industry, that's what we sell, right? So it's better to know what we sell and have some insights about the industry in the country you're applying to. If you have both things, both preparation, I think you're all good to apply. And then, as I said, don't pretend to be somebody else. We have these online tests where you cannot really prepare. It's really about being yourself. Be in a quiet area, have a strong Wi-Fi network. Of course, no matter if it's for the online tests or the videos or even the interviews afterwards. But just be yourself, react as you would react, because all the leaders that you will meet, all the people that you might meet also during the interviews will react as if they were in the job. So I think it's both good for you and for us to know how you would react in our environment, but also for you to discover how you would react in our company. And that's maybe also something that you would learn, that maybe it's not something for you, which is not a problem, right? But at least that's, I think, the best advice I can give, so that you will never be disappointed if you make it through the final selection step.
Excellent. Well, I think, unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our session there. But thank you, Florestan, for those amazing answers, and a big thank you to yourself and AB InBev for coming along to talk to us and our students this afternoon. This has been great. Thank you, Florestan, says Marie in the audience, and so we've had a couple of other ones. So thank you very much. This has been a really insightful session.
I really enjoyed it too, so thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Another big thank you to Flora Stern and to AB InBev for giving up their time this afternoon to talk to us. If you have any other questions, you can find AB InBev and their employees over on My G-Work, and it is completely free to sign up if you haven't already. Log in with LinkedIn, find us, connect to us. More than happy to chat to you. And I hope to see you all next week. Thank you very much.